Hi everyone, and welcome to the Curious Geographer for I think is the 7th season, which is super exciting. If you haven't already, then check out the new poster, and we have tips on, obviously today is about A-level exams and how you can score kind of like the best marks, what examiners are looking out for. There are also other really interesting interviews coming up on kind of air quality and mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So loads of interesting ones. Check out the QR code as well. So today, as I said, we are focusing on particularly year 13 A-level geography exams. So we are really lucky to be joined by Iain Palot, who has been teaching since before England won the World Cup. I heard a couple of weeks ago, which is quite a few years. I'll let you work that one out. But not only is he just a teacher, he was marking exam papers throughout this time, which is about, I don't know, Ian maybe can correct me, probably like 50 years or something of marking A-level geography exam papers. And he's also submitted questions to the exams, and he's also chair of a post-16, or was chair of a post-16 GA committee. So has a wealth of experience on A-level geography. So we are so lucky to have him to give you the top tips, and we're going to make this short and sweet so you can take these tips and take them home and apply them this year. What he loves about geography is the community and the wide variety of geographers and the subject content as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass on to Iain, who's going to tell us what stands out for him in an A-level essay answer.
Hello, Ellie. All the comments that I've got tonight are taken from standardisation meetings with chief examiners or taken from the examiner's report. This is not revolutionary thinking. This is what actually happens. I think the first, probably the most important thing in the essay question is the fact that as a marker I can read it. I think that is terribly important. Scruffy writing, which should have been sorted out years ago, scruffy writing could for a lot of years used to say if it's A-level, the candidate should be writing in A-level English, and therefore we're looking for accurate spelling of key words, we're looking for good grammar, the difference between less and fewer, which people get wrong year after year after year. They don't know the difference between affect and effect, which is fairly serious. And a word you should never use, or an abbreviation you should never ever use anyway, is etc., the old ETC, particularly if you're going to spell it ECT, which shows you're a complete ignoramus. So, top tips: not scruffy writing, accurate spelling of keywords, particularly the technical words, good grammar. Those three things are absolutely vital. Probably the next most important is knowing what the command words mean. Now that might sound incredibly silly or a bit simple, but a describe question is not an explain question. A describe is write a list, and explain is something completely different. You've got to take your list and then do something with it. So you need to know what the command words are, and you need to see them written down in past questions and see exactly what's actually got to be done. So we're writing our essay. We've started our essay. Your essay has got to include the stuff you've learnt. Don't write about things you haven't learnt. Don't answer the questions that you haven't revised. But you need, whatever else you do, you need to have certain components within your essay. So number one is an introduction. Where is this essay going to go? And clearly, if you're doing an OCR 33 marker type of essay, you need to set out what you're going to write about. The AQA 9 markers, you don't have a lot of time for that. I'll come back to those. But if you're writing a long essay that's going to get you a lot of marks, 20 marks for AQA, then you need to say where your essay is going to go. You then need to have 2 or 3 paragraphs, supported by a case study, and then a good conclusion at the end. Good conclusion, absolutely vital. It brings you back to the question that you've been asked in the first place. Don't start your essay by saying, you'll get a question that says, how far do you agree with the statement that? Don't start your essay by saying, I agree. Because if you've agreed on the first line, then what's your essay going to be about? Equally, don't say, I disagree. Because if you've disagreed straight away, what are you then going to say? You can say, I agree, but, or I disagree, but, and then you will offer the evidence that has led you to that conclusion. The examiners really aren't interested in what you think. So, right, I think or I believe, we're really not that interested. What we're interested in is how you mount your argument using the evidence to make your various points. So I really don't care what you think about it. What I care about is, have you got evidence to come to a conclusion? And that's extremely important. Within all of this, you need to be aware that there are 13 concepts in the A-level specifications that you need to be familiar with. I'm not going to go through those. They're in the back of the specification. Can't remember offhand what pages they're on, but there are 13 of them, and you need to know what they are, what they mean, how you're going to use them. And if you go to that list and you find some that you haven't come across, well, then you need to do something that, about that fairly rapidly. So do you know what the concepts are that bind the A-level specs together? And as I was saying to you earlier, it's a bit late for a reading list, but candidates really need to be up to date. There's this dreadful phrase, thinking like a geographer. I need to see in these essays that you know what's going on, that you've got up-to-date information. I don't want to know about Mount St. Helens. I want a more up-to-date volcanic incident. And you should, not only should your information and your reading be up to date, but you should also have some decent references that you can include. And are the sources reliable that you're using? How reliable are these sources that you're quoting from? So all of those things. I don't know whether you're putting these down as a list somewhere, Ellie, but all of these things will come together and should produce you a good essay. Something else that you need to remember, and something that's fairly important, is the question of timing. The AQA and EdXL 20 markers, you should allow 25 minutes at least for those questions. And believe you me, 25 minutes is not long. You've got to read the question. You've got to write your little plan out at the beginning. If you don't plan, then you should plan, because we read the plans. So don't cross it all out. Just put a line through it, because we read the plans. Should the unthinkable happen and you run out of time, we can go back and look at your plan to see where your essay was going to go. Not that you're going to run out of time. I'll come back to running out of time in a moment. 16 markers for OCR, 22 minutes. And for the 33 marker for OCR, 3/4 of an hour, 46 minutes. But you must stick to those timings. So the low tariff questions at the beginning of the paper, you rip through those really quickly to build up time for the longer questions. The higher tariff questions at the end, the higher tariff questions have obviously got higher tariff marks. AQA's paper 1 is 120 marks, and you get 150 minutes. So you get it's 1 minute 15 seconds per mark. That doesn't mean to say you sit there with your watch, having written the answer, waiting for it to tick round to 1 minute 15 seconds before you go on to the next question. You get through those quickly, so you've got loads of time left at the end. AQA also had this bizarre 9-mark question, and the 9-mark question really needs to be short, punchy paragraphs. Short paragraph, make the point quickly, and then at the end, some sort of evaluative conclusion. So in conclusion, and then use words like could, on the other hand, maybe, those sort of evaluative words. People find evaluation very difficult because they don't know the words to use. But as soon as you say however about something, or this could happen, but it might not. On the other hand, you're making some sort of evaluation, some sort of judgment. The biggest sin, and something I've seen done and it doesn't work, is people guess what the question is going to be about. They pre-write their answer and then they learn it. And then they go into the exam hall and having learnt their answer, they write their answer out. They write however many pages they're going to write. But what they haven't done, of course, is they haven't answered the question, because we've actually asked the question a slightly different angle we've taken on it. And I'd say I've seen students do that and they come seriously unstuck. Practice writing the long answers, of course, but don't try and guess what the examiner's going to ask you. Do you want me to go through those in order, or are you happy that I've covered?
If you can go back, I know we had them in order. I've put up the slides as they've gone through, but if you could just do, and I'll flick through the images as well, just so everybody knows. So just so you know, the first one was tip 1 was know the concept. So yeah, if you're happy just to be like tip 1, this, tip 2, this, tip 3, then I just think it's all in just for students to remember. That'd be great. So over to you now.
So tip number 1 is the 13 specialised concepts. You need to be familiar. You need to be more than familiar with those. That is crucial. That's understanding throughout the 2 years. Secondly, your up-to-date reading and references. You should still be reading stuff. Geographical Review, decent newspaper, The Guardian, Times, I suppose, Economist is worth looking at, and decent websites, Circle of Blue, things like that. Make certain your stuff is reliable. Number 3 was the accurate spelling of all words, but particularly the technical language. You've had to learn the technical language. You should know how to spell it. Okay, so if you can't spell, you're going to write about development issues, you're going to write about diarrhea, make certain you can spell it, or alternatively talk about stomach upsets, which people can cope with. Good grammar. Your grammar needs to be A-level grammar. So words like less and fewer, you need to sort out, affect and effect, those sort of things. The full stop is a useful little device as well. Again, read exam papers where one page hasn't got a full stop on it. It makes it very difficult to read, very difficult to understand. Scruffy writing, number 5, scruffy writing is a big no-no. If you've got scruffy writing, then you've got, 5 weeks, 6 weeks to sort that out. If I can't read it, I can't mark it. And remember that your exam paper gets scanned in. So I'm reading it on my computer. And scruffy writing, lots of crossings out, all that sort of stuff does not come across terribly well. And you could end up, I don't know whether you put this on the slide, but an A grade answer could end up as a C if I can't, if the marker can't read it. Make certain you know the command words. Describe is not explain, and explain is not describe. Make certain you understand what the command word is and what it's asking you to do. It's no good just catching on a word and writing. Good conclusion, number 7, never agree or disagree. Never start your answer with by agreeing. You can agree, but, or generally speaking, I would agree. However, and instantly you're evaluating and you're starting a discussion. Then number 8 was the I believe, I think. Again, the examiners aren't interested in that. We're not interested in what you think or believe. We're interested in what your argument is, what evidence you've got to answer the question. Whether you believe it to be right or wrong is immaterial. What evidence have you got? The 9th one was this question about timing. Get your timing right. Work out what the timing is before you go into the exam. The AQA people already know, I've just told them. Work out the timing, and for heaven's sake, stick to it. Don't let's work it all out before you go in and then forget about it. how many minutes have you got per mark? That's how you work it out. How long's the exam? How many marks? Divide one into the other. How many marks have I? How much time have I got to get 1 mark? And remember, I haven't included this on here, but remember that the lines that you get in the exam reflect the marks. So a 4-mark question, you'll have 8 lines. In other words, you've got to get a mark every 2 lines. So you haven't got time to write, fluffy stuff. You've got to get straight into it. And if you've written 2 lines and there is no mark there, then those 2 lines are a waste. Don't write the question out. The examining team have lived with these questions for probably 18 months. They're probably writing exam papers at the moment for 2023 November or even 2024. So they know what the question is. They don't need you to write it out, and you're not going to get a mark for it. So you waste 2 lines writing that down. And I suppose the 10th one would be the don't pre-write your answers. Don't pre-guess what you think the examiner's going to ask you, and then find out when you get in there that they haven't actually asked you that.
Those are brilliant. Thank you. We've got a few questions that have come in, so I thought we could kind of bounce on the ones that are talking about 20 markers, and then I do have a few more questions. So thank you so much for those tips and for going back over in terms of the core content. I just wanted to reiterate, so I've actually marked A-level exam papers myself as well, and I used to think that it didn't matter in terms of writing. When I was a teacher, I'd be like, it's fine, they'll understand it. But honestly, if you are marking an exam and examiners are under pressure to try and make sure they're marking as accurately, but also like time efficiently as possible. So although they want you to do the best, it really is important. If examiners cannot read your handwriting, they just can't award you the marks. They might send it back to somebody else to have a look at, but ultimately you're not giving yourself the best chance, and you've worked for 2 whole years on it. So make sure your examiners can read it. That's really, really important. In terms of the conclusion as well, the conclusion on all exam boards are actually given a mark as well. So I'll just ask you this question now, Iain. If students run out of time, do they just bullet point? I would say that they would bullet point and then like add a conclusion if they're missing some time on an essay question. What would be your advice for running out of time, particularly on essay questions?
My advice on running out of time is don't.
If they do.
Yeah. I mean, you know how much time you've got. You really shouldn't run out of time, and that is the cardinal sin, is running out of time. If it looks like there's a possibility that you're going to run out of time, then you can put in refer to plan at the top of the page, because the plan should still be there if you've done a plan. Bullet points, okay, there have to be substantial bullet points, but then keep time for the conclusion. So keep time for the conclusion is really important, because that is really part of the evaluation, coming to conclusions. Yeah, fantastic. So the conclusion is like the most, really, really important. So timings. There was a question as well saying from John, do we have to put a line through the plan or can we leave it? And I think what Iain was saying earlier is definitely leave your plan in there. It shows how you're thinking in terms of a geographer as well. So plans are really good, particularly if you're for timings. Just put a line through it. Don't cross it out. Just put a diagonal line through it so that we can see that that's your plan, and the essay starts a couple of lines down. Yeah.
Or if it's like clear as a plan, if it says plan, then the examiners will know what you're doing. So for larger mark questions, it says, do you look for AO1 and AO2? So Iain, would you mind just talking a little bit about the difference between AO1 and AO2 and how examiners look for that?
AO1 is the knowledge. AO1 is the factual stuff. AO2 is the understanding of that knowledge, the application of that knowledge, and the answer to that is yes. The AQA 20 markers, it's 10 AO1 and 10 AO2. Very, very simple. The 33 markers, I'm thinking back a couple of years now, the 33 markers are exactly the same. The marks are divvied up. Plus the fact, of course, these essays are level marked as well. So there's AO1 and AO2, and then the level is, the leveling comes in. So certainly for the 33 marker type question, the way we marked those was to read the essay first of all, which is why it's got to be neat. So I only want to read it the once. Read the essay first of all and decide on a level. So I've read this answer. Is it level 2? Is it level 3? Well, there's bits of level 3 in there, and there are bits of level 2. I then have to make a decision as to where I'm going to put it. It's definitely level 3. Okay, bottom of level 3, top of level 3. If it's the top of level 3, is it actually the bottom of level 4? I mean, and this is how you mark papers. This is how we're instructed to mark. We're instructed to give as many marks as we possibly can. We're never going to see the perfect answer, but we might see something that is really good and is worth being at the top of level 4 in the case of these 33 markers, or top of level 3 for the 20 markers. And if it's good enough, you give it the marks.
Yeah, I completely agree with what couple of things in to reiterate that examiners are wanting you to do. They really want to mark really fantastic exam questions. So and I think what Iain said, it was really useful. There's not a perfect answer. There's many ways to sometimes approach a question or structure it, or all students will have slightly different evidence and ideas on it. So teachers or examiners are looking to award marks. And in terms of the AO1, AO2, just as Iain said, I was actually taught again to look for your level first. So for AQA, it's either detailed in level 4, and then level 3 is kind of like you've answered the question well, you've actually answered it. And then I think level 2 was where you are only partially answering the question. So if you've like missed the point or you've gone off on a tangent, that actually massively limits you. So you need to make sure that you're really thinking like, am I answering the question? Because in AQA, when I marked it, if you only partially answered the question level 2, you were stuck at under 10 marks. Because that's the top of level 2. So that's why it's really important in terms of your AO2. And I have made a video on exam questions for AQA, but it can work for longer exam questions for other boards if you want. But it's that application, so that's part of AO2. So not only are you evaluating, but you're actually answering the question. So for example, how significant are T&Cs at promoting growth compared to the UN? You're actually linking and applying to the question.
Which is why, Ellie, if I just interrupt, this is why the plan is so important. Because if you've planned, you spend 2 or 3 minutes planning out your essay, you're not likely to go off on a tangent because you've planned out how you're going to say and what you're going to say and what case studies you're going to use. And so you're right, going off at the tangent and ending up down in level 2, can well, yeah, it does happen. I mean, we know it happens. But the well-planned B-grade papers always have plans. To do a plan doesn't mean to say you'll get a B. Of course you won't. But the better answers have always been planned.
That's a really good. The better answers have always been planned. There is a question on the specialised concepts. So saying Michaela, I think, says, are the specialised concepts used in all questions or just 20 markers? So they are across the specification in terms of core and non-core content. I'll put them on the screen. But Iain, do you mind telling us what the purpose are of the specialised concepts? Because some students would have been taught it in their geography lessons, for example, systems a lot, or identity and globalization, but it may not have been highlighted that it's a specialized concept. So do you mind telling us what the purpose are of these specialized concepts?
I think they form the bedrock to the whole specification, and things could crop up absolutely anywhere. So I'm looking at the list here. Vulnerability, for example. Vulnerability could crop up absolutely anywhere. If you're not aware of the word vulnerability, then you won't use it. If you can't spell it, check that out as well. But vulnerability could come up as a hazard question, as an ecosystem climate change issue. It could come up as a development issue. It could come up as an urban issue with inequality. There's another one. In urban areas. So it just binds the whole thing together. You're not expected. You won't necessarily get them all in one lump. the word could well appear in the question. Word like globalization could well appear, actually as part of the question. Do you understand globalization? Do you understand identity? So when you're doing change in places or distant places, have you got identity sorted? Are you clear about identity? I don't know what people have done for their NEAs, but they might well have done something on how people identify. Do they identify as being from a particular culture, a particular region, a particular part of London? I mean, I have a cousin who's married to a West Indian, and I think you will probably know, working where you work, West Indians, there's no such thing as a West Indian. They identify as being from that particular island. In the same way, I'm not a Channel Islander, I am from Guernsey. And a Jersey person would never, I'm not supposed to say that word, people from the other island wouldn't identify as Channel Islanders because they are from Jersey. And so those sort of issues, I'm looking at some of these other things, mitigation and adaptation, that could apply to any number of things. Coasts, volcanic activity, earthquake activity. In fact, I've just written a couple of earthquake questions involving the words mitigation and adaptation. So yes, they're words that A-level geographers should be comfortable using. That's the other thing. They should be comfortable with them, and it will mean, we haven't talked about synopticity yet, but synopticity is your ability to draw stuff into one answer from somewhere else. So you'll pull things in from perhaps something you're not answering a question on, but it helps illustrate the point. If you're talking about risk, risk isn't just about volcanoes, sea level rise. Risk could be financial risk. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
I've put a link onto there's an exam board. It doesn't matter that it's not your exam board. These specialised concept organisers, and they said thinking like a geographer. So it says like, how far do you agree with these statements, and also just questions. So if you are wanting to do a bit of kind of some kind of specialised concept work, if you download the knowledge organisers, you can have a quick look at them. Now, and we did say this was going to be nice and short and sweet for exams so that students can refer to it. So there were some questions on 9 markers, and I've got one on 6 markers, and then we'll probably wrap it up there if that's okay with you. Saying the 9 markers, Ikra says, I feel like it's hardest to gauge how many marks I've got. And then there was another one saying, how important are examples for 6/9 mark questions, not case studies, but quote, like random facts and figures. And I would actually say, first of all, in terms of examples, that evidence can be used in all questions from 4 mark and above. So evidence isn't just for your 20 markers at all, in terms of, not your case study detail, but your place examples of locations. They can be used from 4 marks up.
Yeah. One chief examiner calls them diamonds in the mud. In the middle of an answer, suddenly you get there's a flash of inspiration, and someone has included the one-line case study, I call them, where you're not giving me detail of the massive detail that you've got about the case study, but you would write something like, this also happened, or this can also be identified in Rio de Janeiro, Lagos, wherever it happens to be, Australia, whatever you're writing about. It shows that you're aware that this is not a one-off thing, that it does actually occur elsewhere. This occurs in some American cities. You don't have to name the American cities, just be aware that it happens in some American cities, or some English, some European cities. So
diamonds in the mud. So include them as in your in all questions. And 9 markers, I think you said just like slightly shorter paragraphs, so students can still evaluate.
Short, punchy paragraphs, not you haven't got time to go into a great deal of detail for 9 marks. So you'll have 18 lines. You need to make your points. Paragraphs will be, I'm trying to think, 18 lines. That would be 3 paragraphs of 6 lines each. It would be 2 lines for a conclusion, 2 for an introduction, I mean, you need to juggle it round. Students need to look at some 9-mark questions and look at the mark scheme. Get hold of the mark scheme. They're all online. Look at the mark scheme, and would you have included that in that answer? Oh no, I didn't. Oh, you're never going to get that question, obviously, because it's from a past paper. But it's worth having a look at the mark scheme to see what the examiner is going to be giving you marks for. Did we want to say something about synopticity?
Yes, and Nico has said, how do you know what is irrelevant and what is synoptic? So that leads us into this one.
Very neatly, right, okay. Synopticity is about drawing information and ideas from across the specification. Now, there are bits of the specification that aren't going to be examined. That doesn't mean, I mean, you won't have revised it in any great detail, but you'll know about it, you'll have it in the back of your mind, and there's no reason why that shouldn't be introduced. If you're writing about ecosystems and you've got stuff that you've done in A-level biology, then bring that in. You can bring stuff in from A-level history, dare I say it. If you've got stuff from elsewhere, then bring that in. It shows a breadth of thinking and a breadth of understanding. But most importantly, you're expected in all these questions to make the links between people and environment, between physical and human. So if you're writing about physical things, don't forget the human factors. The old pen list grid. If you're writing about human factors, human thing, don't forget about the environmental stuff. So if you're writing about, I think what you'd be writing about, you're doing an urban question. Don't forget there are a whole series of environmental issues that may impinge on the urban fabric. So changing places, for example. I mean, my area of knowledge on London is really in the eastern part of London. The air pollution levels in the eastern part of London, whilst still dreadful, they are far, far better than they ever were, because the Olympic Park is now the Olympic Park, and it's not a huge toxic industrial estate. So those sort of, but you need to make those links. They're the links that we're actually looking for. edXL provide the resource booklet for their paper 4, and so you've got all the resources you need for that. But the important thing, I go back to some of the points I made earlier, check the wording of the question, because the synoptic element is likely to be in the higher tariff questions, the 33 marker, the 20 marker, the 16 marker, but also the 9 marker for AQA. There is an element in there, in that 9 marker, that you would be expected to show some degree of synopticity, right? Linking human and physical. So, for example, we have a question here from a paper to remain nameless, with reference to a tropical rainforest, check. Evaluate, check. The role of governance, check. In environmental management, check. So you've got 4 things to do there. You've got to refer to a tropical rainforest. You've got to evaluate. So on the one hand, on the other hand, you've got to talk about the role of governance, and you've got to talk about environmental management. Now, if you can't get synopticity into that somehow, then you really perhaps shouldn't be doing this exam. Horrendous question, absolutely awful question, but ideal. If that's what you've revised, that would be an absolute gift.
And I think what you're saying, synopticity, I think it's just about that thinking. So just being confident that you can bring in ideas from different areas. I think that's the most important thing, because you've got all the knowledge out there for students who are listening. It's just there. You just need to maybe tap in and not feel afraid. And in fact, I've taught different students where I've had either like some confident students who just kind of put things in, and as a teacher I have to almost check to see if they're actually factually correct, or and they might, but actually that's what makes a really strong essay. So you kind of want to go in there confident and feel that you can link to different areas, because you have all been studying geography for A-level for a couple of years, but GCSE as well. So use just your skills as a geographer to answer the questions, and that's what examiners are looking to answer as well.
And if there's relevant stuff from your NEA, then use that. I mean, that's your own personal research. So if there's something relevant to the question, then obviously you use that, and you make a big deal out of the three NEA letters to show the examiner that you've picked that up. My mark scheme that I get from the exam board is nice and black and white on a sheet of A4, but by the time I'm finished with it, I've added in so much other stuff that students have written about, because everyone does different case studies, so many different things, and you barely see the original underneath all the annotations on it. And yeah, I mean, if it's good geography, it's good geography, and he gets the marks.
We're going to round up soon, so if anybody does have any final questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll see if we can get through to them. But just to terms in what Iain was saying about synopticity, I know a lot of the advanced information have parts obviously taken out of the spec. So if you've learned it and you feel like it hasn't been included, you'll still have that in your long-term memory, or examples and places are still really important. So even if it's like particularly crossed out or it says the case study is not included, you can draw in from different areas of the specification. So I'd say just if you kind of go away with kind of, apart from those kind of top tips and synopticity, just feel confidence in what you've learned. Don't obviously, like, you can mainly revise on the topic they've said in terms of the advanced information, but just feel confidence that you can pull in different areas in order just to kind of make the essay as like good as you can do, and synoptic, and just show your understanding answering the question. One examiner told me in terms of how do you write a good essay, actually I think it's earlier, David Holmes did this when so I'll put the link to that, but it was the internet was a bit dodgy, and he said they just need to answer the question. That's all you need to do. Just answer the question, pull in some evidence, and that's it. So that's what his top tip was as an examiner. Iain, do you have any final things that you would like to add? I've just briefly touched upon the advanced information. We haven't talked much about kind of 6 markers, but I think everybody was more after the kind of the higher tariff questions. Yeah. And then you did link to something that the University of Birmingham has done, which I'm going to put a link as well. Do you want to tell us what this is?
Yeah, on the BBC Bite Size have a whole list of stuff on revision, and in amongst all of that, Birmingham City University have their top tips for revision. Their top tip is eat, sleep, revise, repeat, which is a good, I think, a good little 4-word message mantra to think about. Make certain you're eating properly, make certain you're sleeping properly, make certain you're revising. And they talk about revising for 25 minutes and then having a breather and so on and so forth. But there's some really good tips in there. One of the tips is the use of chewing gum. Chewing gum brings the movement of the jaw as you chew the gum, brings blood to the brain, or brings blood to the head, and therefore blood to the brain, and therefore more oxygen to the brain. I always used to encourage my students to take gum into the exam. Colleges used to get terribly upset about it. All my geography students, they're chewing away like a herd of cows. Whether it made any difference or not, I don't know. But it's medically, it's more oxygen to the brain. So chewing gum is good, and it also helps keep you awake. And the other thing I used to encourage them to do, about half an hour before they go into the exam, to eat half a Mars bar. Because again, that's a good stimulant. So only half a Mars bar, or a lump of dairy milk, half a Mars bar for the exam, and chewing gum during the exam. I don't know how acceptable that will be to college and school authorities, but
no, yeah, that's great. I think everybody just heard that. Hold on, I'm just gonna. Yeah, I think I already just heard that. Sorry, I have a habit of putting myself on mute sometimes. So that's fantastic. I just answered one comment in there about a 6 marker, and as well in the chat for you to see. So I've put some links in the chat for everybody in terms of the words, and hopefully we've answered some of your questions. But from me and Iain as well. Iain, are you marking this summer, or are you no longer marking?
No, I've decided not to mark this summer.
Okay, that's right. Well, from me and Iain, from all Iain's wealth of experience and all my years of experience, not quite decades as Iain has. We wish you the best of luck. If you do have any questions, just put any questions at the bottom, and I will I will refer to Iain, or then I can answer them myself as well. I'm just going to finish that question for those who's just in the chat that's in at the moment. But yeah, from both of us, in any final words, just a good luck.
Good luck. I mean, yeah, you've done the work, you put in the hard yards, so now is the time to show off and show us just how good you are.
And so from me, that's everything. And yeah, best of luck. If there's something on clean air, if you're part of an eco club at school, you could pass that on. But yeah, wishing you all the best of luck, and just message me anything and I can always put on another revision session if you'd like, or tips. And that's everything from me.